One of the great Tzvat rituals was the cult, shall I say, of the Shekinah and the cult of the divine marriage. Now, people don't really think about this when they go to temple in America and rise at the end of a certain hymn and bow and sing, "Come, O bride, come, O bride." But in fact, the Tzvat Kabbalists viewed the Friday night service and meal as a wedding feast, when the divine parts of God above unified with the earthly, feminine aspect of God in the world, the Shekinah, and they had sexual union on Friday night. And this has survived into general Jewish practice to this day.
Hi guys, this is channel Psalm86. I'm continuing in my little research series. The first one I did about a week and a half ago was called More on Mormonism and Kabbalah. And I'm going to continue today with this one called Shekinah Glory and the Sabbath Queen. Did you know that most people in the charismatic movement and even some in the Pentecostal movement who exalt Shekinah glory are basically paying homage to the Kabbalistic female side of Ein Sof, the Kabbalah god? The parallels of most heresy stems from Kabbalah. Of course, Kabbalah is a Heinz 57 of a mixture of heresies. Kabbalah, among other false belief systems, attribute androgyny to God. Occultists revere Baphomet because he is androgynous. 14th century Christian Kabbalists, i.e. the Philadelphian Society, which influenced Count Zinzendorf, and the Moravians, which ironically influenced charismatics Mike Bickle and Rick Joyner, attributed Jesus' side wound when he got speared on the cross as a form of him being androgynous. That is how bad this stuff gets. But in regards to Shekinah, be very leery when speaking of Shekinah, because much of what is said about Shekinah is not from the Lord at all, but from the Kabbalah. Excerpts from my research below. The 10th and final Sephiroth. Shekinah means kingdom or eminence and represents God's presence in the everyday human world. Appearing at the base of the tree of life, Shekinah gathers all the energies of the previous 9 Sephiroth and transmits them to the human world below. Because Shekinah serves as the foundation of the other 9 Sephiroth, it is often associated with God's spine or feet. Shekinah serves as a bridge between the realm of God and the world humans inhabit. In fact, Shekinah is the only Sephiroth that descends into the human world. The goal of all Kabbalists is to bring about the union of Shekinah, the female representative of God in the human world, and Teferet, the masculine side of God. Kabbalists believe that righteous action on the part of believers stimulates Yesod, God's phallus, and hastens the divine union of Shekinah and Tefereth. Marriage and sexual intercourse among human beings are believed to be symbolic of Shekinah and Tefereth's divine union. Shekinah's biblical character is David, the second king of the 12 tribes of Israel. Kabbalists aim to unite Shekinah and Teferah to restore God to a state of wholeness, the ultimate goal of Kabbalah. Achieving this union is no easy feat, of course, and Shekinah ends up bearing much of the burden. As the sole Sephiroth to appear in the human world, Shekinah is an exile, someone removed from her homeland. Because Shekinah is stuck in the material human world against her will, Kabbalists liken her plight to the exile of the Jewish people from their holy land of Palestine. Kabbalists believe that doing good deeds, they can bring together the male Tefereth and female Shekinah aspects of God, which accomplishes 3 aims at once: the restoration of God to a state of wholeness, the rescue of Shekinah from exile, and symbolically the return of the Jews to their holy land. And now let's go to the research that I have. And I've read this, as a matter of fact, I read this in the Kabbalah New Age Gaining Ground in the Church. I read this excerpt on the Sabbath Queen, but I'm going to go ahead and read it again. Much of the heavy Sabbath observation days are observed by mystics and Kabbalists. The purpose of the Sabbath has to do with ushering in Tikkun, which means restoring the world to its original state before the fall. Much of that has to do with Shekinah. Shekinah, the 9th Sephiroth, represents God's presence in the human world of material reality in which humans live. Shekinah, the daughter of Binah, is a female Sephiroth whose role is to channel all the energies of the upper 9 Sephiroth into the everyday human world. Without Shekinah, humans would have no concrete understanding of divinity. Kabbalist literature typically portrays that Shekinah as an outcast, a lone Sephiroth. Her separation from Ein Sof and the other Sephiroth parallels the exile of the Jewish people from their homeland of Israel. Because Shekinah is part of Ein Sof can never be whole or healed until Shekinah returns from exile, just as Jews can never know peace until all Jews can return to Israel. Kabbalistic literature symbolically represents this return in the sexual union of Shekinah and Tephereth, the Sephiroth that represents God's beauty. Kabbalists all share the same aim, to unite Shekinah with Tephereth through faithful devotion to Kabbalah, and in turn bring about the restoration of Ein Sof. Kabbalists believe that by doing good deeds, observing Sabbath, they can bring together the male Tephereth and female Shekinah aspects of God, which accomplishes three aims at once: the restoration of God to a state of wholeness, the rescue of Shekinah from exile, and symbolically the return of the Jews to their Holy Land. Whereas many religions shy away from embracing or even addressing the sexual side of life, Kabbalah makes the sexual act at the source of the religion's highest aim. In most Kabbalistic writings, the longing of Tephereth for Shekinah and vice versa is described explicitly as sexual desire. Their lust for one another is said to stimulate God's phallus, which brings the two together in sexual bliss. Perhaps most surprising is that Kabbalah followers believe that the only way for them to restore the wholeness of God is to stimulate God's phallus by studying Kabbalah and doing good deeds and observing Sabbath. Another way Kabbalists believe they can honor the union of Tephereth and Shekinah is by getting married and having sex. Kabbalists have long considered Friday night the beginning of the Sabbath, Shekinah's holiest hour, and therefore the ideal time for marriages and sex to take place. Taken from the Kabbalah Spark Notes. The Kabbalists cited three separate passages in the Talmud which are brought together and presented. The first tells us of the eve of the Sabbath. Certain rabbis used to wrap themselves in their cloaks and cry out, "Come, let us go to meet Queen Sabbath." Others cried out, "Oh, come, O bride, come, O bride." The third passage tells us that Torah scholars used to perform marital intercourse precisely on Friday night. These unrelated reports are interested in the Kabbalistic books of rituals as indications that the Sabbath is indeed a marriage festival. The earthly union between man and woman referred to the third passage was taken as symbolic reference to the heavenly marriage. These themes were combined with a mystical symbolism identifying bride, Sabbath, and Shekinah. Still other mystical notions that played a part in the Kabbalistic Sabbath ritual was the field of the holy apple trees, as the Shekinah is frequently called in the Zohar. In this metaphor, the field is the feminine principle of the cosmos, while the apple trees define the Shekinah as the expression of all the other Sephiroth or holy orchids, which flow into her and exert her influence through her. During the night before the Sabbath, the king is joined with the Sabbath bride, the holy field is fertilized, and from the sacred union the souls of the righteous are produced. The myth of the sacred marriage is the holy union of the masculine and feminine aspects of God. The exile of the weak is overcome as Tephereth, Yesod, and Shekinah enter into that relationship which the Zohar calls Vivuga, Quadisha, which is the mystery of one. The Kabbalistic imagery of the male and female is very fluid and takes various archetypal imagery ranging from primordial androgyny to the two lovers in the songs of the Son of Songs, to Jacob and Rachel, to the Holy One and mystical community of Israel, and to the various guises of groom and bride. The re-imaging of Shabbat as a marriage festival is one of the most significant contributions of the classical Kabbalistic tradition to the later Jewish celebration of the Sabbath. It lays the basis for the ritual innovations of the Safavid mystics and has greatly influenced the popular celebration of Sabbath in recent centuries. The Sabbath Kabbalists, beginning in the middle of the 17th century, developed a solemn and highly impressive ritual, and its prevailing theme is the mystical marriage. They created a strange twilight atmosphere which identified the Shekinah with both the queen of the Sabbath and each and every Jewish housewife who was busy preparing her home for the Sabbath, and this is what gave the Sabbath its massive appeal even to this day. On Friday afternoon, sometime before the onset of the Sabbath, the Kabbalists of Safed and Jerusalem, mostly dressed in white, went out to the city into an open field, with which the arrival of the Shekinah transformed into the holy apple orchard. This ritual was performed in order to meet the bride. The people sang special hymns, and the most famous was Lichat Dodi, which was composed by Solomon Alcabez, who was a member of the Moses Cardaveros group in Safed. The melodies of these songs were performed into a beautiful garland of white flowers, which the Sabbath queen carried into her hand. The female imagery indicates the Kabbalistic identification of the Sabbath with the Shekinah, or Malkut, the last of the 10 Sephiroth, thus welcoming the Sabbath bride, become transformed into an act of ushering the female aspect of God into one's midst.